Okay, here we are again. Welcome, everybody. This has been so inspiring to me. I made quite an anonymous video and I didn't know how it would turn out. I thought it would have crashed and burned, but actually, I see that there's been a lot of views. Um, and that can be a great thing for me personally that someone actually cares to watch my video, but also it's a great thing for Angelina because it seems as though as long as you just write the name Angelina, you know, attention is going to be made. Um, so hopefully she'll be. It is going to be a name of great importance in the future. It in many ways, it is already in terms of art. Um, Another thing that was kind of peculiar because I saw in one of the comments that has been made to my video that someone thought that I taught or worked as a teacher at the Waldorf School in Oslo, but I didn't. This was another type of Waldorf school. But what was a bit peculiar, all of a sudden today, I read a newspaper online, and one of my colleagues from that Waldorf school, her sister was actually mentioned in the newspaper. So it's almost like some kind of fate, in a way. It's just a peculiar thing that her sister was mentioned in the newspaper. She has made a name for herself, but I'm not going to mention any type of names because I don't. I would like to get permission from people that I've met personally before I'm going to mention any type of names. And I'm also quite preoccupied with anonymity. I don't want to be like overexpose myself or any others. This is not what this video is about. It's not really about me either. I saw that someone was interested in my name. I'll have to think about that before I want to give out my name. But as I've said, it's not so much about me. This is more about um, the artistry and the whole thought process and the attention that the phenomenon Angelina Jordan gets throughout the world. I also saw, much to my surprise, that Alan Papier has cared to comment on my video, which was really a pleasant surprise to me. Um, I think, yeah, someone made a comment that the video I made was somewhat similar to Alan Papier. I think that if I'm going to defend myself in any shape or form, I would say that the idea behind it being an analytical approach, to that extent, it might be similar, but the ideas that I come up with are very much my own. So, and I would also like to address the number of reaction videos out there, which are quite substantial. Not just there aren't just a few of them. There's an extreme amount of reaction videos in general, and also to Angelina in specifically. I'm not going to pretend that my English is poor or anything like that. I'm quite aware of my capabilities in that field. I've studied English at university level, and I did rather well, so no worries there. But the thing is, what I'm trying to say is that, well, first and foremost, I process the sentences quite slowly in my head in any language, even in my native language, but particularly when it comes to English, it goes even slower. So I tend to change the way I would like to. I come up with a sentence, and as I go, I tend to change the words I'm looking for as I'm trying to um, get through with what I'm trying to say. And this is going to be one of the aspects that I will look, or that I will scrutinize a bit further in terms of Angelina and her personality as well. So that will hopefully be a bit interesting. I've made a few words. I noticed that it's sort of like an hindrance as well, but I'll try to be succinct and get to the point. Now, yesterday I left you guys. If you haven't watched my first video, then you should, because this is like a continuation of my first video. I was talking about the Oslo Waldorf School and the impact that it might have had on Angelina, or the way it might have shaped her as an artist. I'm not trying to say, or I'm not trying to give full credit to the Waldorf School in terms of Angelina as an artist, or that she wouldn't have been what she is today if it hadn't been for the Waldorf School. But I'm just saying that in so many ways, I think the idea, the pedagogical idea behind the Waldorf School is somewhat, or it harmonizes with a lot of aspects that I can see in Angelina's upbringing. And I'll try to give a few examples. For instance, her parents and her family has been very protective of her, you could say. And I also feel that there's some sort of idea that you shouldn't do too much too soon. And this kind of harmonizes with the idea of the Waldorf School, that you shouldn't be doing things that you could do quite easily when you get a bit older. The child should evolve in their own pace, so to speak. So I think that greatly, it's not like I'm trying to say that the Waldorf School itself has shaped it, but I think basically maybe the ideas or the fundamentals in the upbringing of Angelina sort of on the part of the family sort of harmonizes with the ideas behind, or the philosophical ideas behind, the Waldorf way of thinking. And in my last video, I also pointed out how they wanted to gain or establish ownership to their own creative process, as it were, in terms of when you are coming forth with your art or your whatever, any type of work that would have been made in school. And also the aesthetic and artistic aspect in each and every bit during the academic trail, so to speak. Now, what I have in front of me here, you could see it. I think it's here. Is the English Wikipedia page of the Oslo Waldorf School. Now, the Oslo Waldorf School is the oldest Waldorf school in Norway. This is where the famous author Jens Bjørneboe worked as a teacher. It's written here. The famous Norwegian novelist Jens Bjørneboe worked as a teacher at the school in the 1950s. And he also wrote his book, or his novel Jonas. That was a critique, or actually an attack on the old established educational system of Norway and the Western educational system per se. he has he's not the only one who has attended the Waldorf School. There's been a lot of important Norwegians attending that school. That is to say, renowned or famous people. Um, there is a list. I'll try to give links in that description so you can see for yourself. But actually, there's a list of famous people that has attended school. And one of them, interestingly enough, is the former Prime Minister of Norway, Jens Stoltenberg. He's perhaps now much better known as the Secretary General of NATO, so he should be quite familiar with those who know a thing or two about politics. He should be a known name for them. This is a bit hilarious in a sense because Jan Stoltenberg was more like a product of the flower power ideas in the 1960s. I guess he was pretty much against anything that had to do with both NATO and the military as such. Anyway, he's later changed his course and has become quite a distinct politician in Norway and in the world as such. Now, there's an interesting aspect about that as well. I don't know if I would necessarily go into that now. I think it might be a bit of a digression here. I think I'd rather just mention that you can see Angelina Jordan is mentioned down there on the side, almost at the end. So she's one of those regarded as famous pupils from that school. When it comes to yesterday I also mentioned Odd Nardrum, which is quite a character. He was a Norwegian. He is a Norwegian painter, and he's also a figurative painter, which has made him quite controversial with the connoisseurs of our age, of our time. And he's experienced a lot of hindrances and sparked a lot of controversy in our nation. Now, it is a bit interesting because his son actually has become quite a celebrity in Norway as well, because he joined a reality show in Norway, and the Norwegian people, I think, kind of cherished him because he was in many ways so eccentric and different from the everyday guy from Norway, one could say. It goes without saying, of course, that Jens Bjørneboe also was quite a controversial figure. He had during the 1960s and 70s, he had more of an anarchistic type of viewpoint, and he combined it with some sort of socialism. But anyway, in any case, he was quite individualistic. And I also think that Rudolf Steiner himself, had that individualistic type of viewpoint where you should cultivate the the uniqueness of each individual. There was no need in becoming similar to the others or reach like a consensus that you should cherish the diversity of people. And I think that aspect as well it is one aspect that could be taken into consideration when you look on Angelina as an artist, because she's quite extraordinary, quite unique, and does her own thing as well, and dare to be different, I should say, when you think of the mainstream pop industry of today. All right, so now we'll move on further to even more deep philosophical thoughts. Now, I previously mentioned my own way, or my speaking habit, my way of phrasing myself. The way I tend to phrase myself is that I usually start up with a sentence, and I try to look for the best words possible, of course. And then all of a sudden, in the midst of a sentence, I might change my mind, and maybe I second guess myself and tend to think that maybe I should have chosen a different word, or maybe I should reshape my sentence in a different way or alter it. And this is quite interesting, because if you look at Angelina and the way and her speaking habits, the way she expresses herself, I think there might be some similarities. I really enjoyed Alan Papier's way of, or the thing he pointed out with her laughter. Now, he made a comparison. You can watch it yourself on his channel. But he made a comparison between Angelina Jordan and Adele, the way they laughed. Now, Adele had quite I would call it like an extroverted laugh, very harsh, very loud, very wide, in a sense. Angelina is quite the opposite. And you can see, even from an early age up until today, she tends to hold her hand in front of her mouth when she laughs. It's almost like she's trying to stop herself from exposing her. I don't know why, but it's almost like she tries to stop herself from exposing too much of her inner feelings. So I would definitely call it an introverted type of projection, okay? An introverted type of projection of inner thoughts and feelings. I'll show you a few examples if I can find them in all of the videos that I've okay, this is going to take a minute. Here we are. So this is the first example that I could give. Now, not just when she's laughing, but also when she's crying, when she's deeply emotionally moved, she is very composed. You know what I mean? It's not like she is exposing much of her inner emotions or project her inner emotion to the audience. Well, she has quite a how shall I put it, extroverted or a deeply and intense emotional awareness when she sings. But as an individual, as through her personality, she's quite the opposite. She's very, in a way, shy, very composed at least, and also quite, maybe the word I'm looking for is demure. I'll show you an example of her reaction when she got the golden buzzer in the Bohemian Rhapsody rendition. Look at that. She holds her hands in front of her face. She almost like she's trying to hide her inner feelings. It's hard for me to speculate why she does it, but it's not something that she does, I think, deliberately. This is just her going with her instincts. Let's have a quick look at this, because it's quite interesting. Look at that. And she's continuously holding her hands in front of the face. Look at how composed she is, even during these emotional circumstances, you know. Look at that. Not everybody is like that, to put it mildly. You know, most people would be shouting and screaming and jumping all over the place, like you can see so many times in these type of reality shows. And by the way, there was one point that I was trying to make yesterday that I forgot about, and that is that one of the reasons why I don't like reality shows, I said it, why I don't really like talent shows like this is because it's not so much, at least it didn't used to be. Maybe these days it's more, it has improved somewhat, at least. Back in the days, it wasn't really a talent show. It wasn't so much about the talents, it was more about the drama. So these aren't really talent shows per se, it's more like reality shows. So if you can't find drama, you'll make up some drama, you know. So these shows cannot be trusted. And that's also why I have such great difficulties with having like a relation to those type of programs. So I kind of tend to shy away from them. I'm more interested in the talents than making it into a circus act. But let's continue with Angelina and her personality. There is something called, or we do have something called personality tests. Now, a personality test is a description of someone's personality, to put it clearly. And there are many types of personality tests. Some might consider personality tests as pseudoscience. However, there is one test that is approved by, this psychological field, and that is the Big Five. I've read a bit about the Big Five, but I've also read a bit about, for instance, the Myers-Briggs test, and I don't think that what a Myers-Briggs test describes about a person is anything less than the Big Five. Actually, quite the contrary in many ways. But there are some pairs or dichotomies in the Myers-Briggs test. For instance, the idea of introversion and extroversion. And you can see a bit about it here. It's called the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. And if I was going to make a guess, again, this is just me speculating, I would probably place Angelina's personality more in this area here, the INFJ or the INFP field. Now let's read a bit about it. The INFP, they are sensitive. Is Angelina sensitive? I would say so. Creative. Is she creative? Well, it goes without saying. Idealistic. Well, we don't have to mention that shoe story anymore to make a statement that she is highly idealistic. Perceptive, caring, loyal, value inner harmony and personal growth, focus on dreams and possibilities. Now, all of these things might apply to Angelina. She could also be an INFJ, idealistic, organized, insightful, dependable, compassionate, gentle, seek harmony and cooperation, enjoy intellectual stimulation. So it's kind of hard to distinguish between the two, and I don't know her, of course, personally. I don't know well enough to say anything about it any further than I've already done. But there are some aspects here that gives quite a good explanation of her personality, the way I see it. She's definitely an introverted individual anyway. That is a given. Now, the reason why I point this out is because I'm quite familiar with what it means to be an introverted individual, because I am that myself. So I can recognize myself in that. And I talked about the speech pattern. Now, let's take a further look at her speech pattern. One of the interesting things when I see an interview of her is her speech pattern. Let's listen to this, just to give you a quick example.
Till å synge en praise-låt.
There she is, and she speaks in her native language. Okay, did you notice? It was subtle maybe, but it's one of the interviews that I can find when she's grown up, or not grown up, when she's approximately, or when she's older, let me put it that way. And she also speaks in her native language. Maybe it's a bit hard to notice in that example, but she started to speak and then there was an abrupt stop. And then she continued with her sentence. And I can recognize myself so much in that because I don't have the ability to make like fluent sentences. I tend to make a stop, look for another word, and then continue with my sentence. So I can recognize myself in that. Let's make another example to make it even clearer. Now this is when she was, let's say, 9, 8, 9, maybe. Just listen to her speak pattern. This is also in Norwegian.
Hva er det du liker med å reise?
Jeg lærer veldig mye ting.
Look at what she's doing when she speaks. She says something like, what do you like about traveling? And she starts with the sentence, I learn, and she looks up as though she's looking for an answer from upstairs, so to speak, and then she continues. I'll show you once more.
Jeg lærer veldig mye ting, og man lærer mye mer enn ting enn å gå på skole.
And she's also very hesitant when she makes a sentence. It's not fluent. I could have made a contrast with Danelia Tuleshova, for instance, when she speaks. She's also a girl about her same age, and she's going perhaps through the same type of experiences that Angelina now is doing. But she speaks on like in and out breath all the time. It's a stark contrast between the two. You could find a video of her yourself. Now, okay, you might say that this is because she was a child. Children have this tendency to be abrupt and not so coherent and so on and so forth. And it's not like she's not being coherent. She has a clear meaning behind what she's saying, but it just takes a bit to get there from start to end. No, if you look at this interview, this was made in 2020. Listen to her speak pattern here.
Helt utrolig at det så mange mennesker som gir så mange millioner meldinger.
Listen to all her stops before she continues. It's almost like an engine that has a bit of a trouble that starting up properly. So obviously, when she speaks, she does a lot of thinking, and it's hard for her to communicate through words. And she said so herself in a couple of interviews that I want to make the singing speak for me, not so much the talking. That might be one of the reasons why she makes so few interviews, maybe, but I don't really know. Again, it calls for speculation. So, what am I really trying to say about all this? Well, what I'm really trying to say is that she clearly has the introverted traits and the type of personality traits that I could recognize even within myself, and that I could recognize by many Norwegians. This is very distant, I would say, from, let's say, let's make, or let's give the United States, make it into an example. That's a very extroverted society. And what she gives as an artist is perhaps so, let's say, refreshing, because she's so different from many of the mainstream artists of today. Like I said, they are so in your face all the time. And I do feel that, again, this is my highly personal opinion, but I do feel that a lot of music today is so much about, it's like a production team behind it. It's a product more than ever. It is a product on behalf of a record company, or made in a studio. And if you, and this is going to be my final point, because I don't know if this turned out as well as I would like it to be, would have liked it to be, but anyway, this is how it went. I'm improvising, just as Angelina is improvising with her singing. This is going to be my closing point, is that I think Angelina is at her best when there is as little production behind her as possible. When I'll give you an example once more. When she performed the Bohemian Rhapsody rendition at AGT, it was live and it was extremely refreshing, and it just felt so, let's put it, flawless, and it felt so spontaneous. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. It felt so spontaneous and at the spur of the moment. And that, at least for me, it sort of gives me such an uplifting feeling. When she later made it into a recorded version, it felt more constricted. That's my highly personal opinion, but it felt more constricted. It's almost like she's put some thought process into it. It didn't flow as easily as it did with the rendition from AGT. And I think that's a clue that really describes Angelina quite a lot is that she's truly more than anything else a live artist. She is born to be on stage, much more so than being in a studio. Um, so I'm really hoping to see Angelina live, um, well, as soon as humanly possible. Actually, if I had a ticket to one of her performances, but then 2020 happened, then the COVID happened, so it wasn't possible. But again, her ability to make spontaneous renditions of highly complex songs is perhaps one thing that makes her so unique. And also, her runs, the runs that she makes, they are so refreshing, but also so unpredictable. It's like you wouldn't expect, usually if you know a bit about music, you could sort of guess what's coming when you make a run in a song or whatever. But with her, it's so unpredictable. She has her own way of making runs. And this is also in close relation to jazz, because instead of scatting like boop da ba doop da boop 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 boop, she is making that type of scatting with melismas, as they're called, with the runs. And that's also deeply fascinating. I've never heard that before, being done before in a jazz context. Runs in themselves are quite common in R&B and soul music, and yeah, but not very commonly executed in jazz. Okay, so that's it. Hopefully, it has brought a bit more insight into the phenomenon Angelina and what truly makes Angelina such a unique personality in the realm of the modern day pop industry. That's all I've got. Bye.